back to Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. This week we are making a traditional almond baklava. Almonds are our food of the week, and this should be a delicious treat that we are making all together. Rosa, are you excited to bake?
Yeah.
What are you wearing?
Apron.
Your apron. Am I wearing one too?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Are you ready to bake?
Yeah.
Okay. The recipe we're using this week comes from a blog called The Wandering Spice. It was written by a blogger named Yasmin. And
I made a funny in my mouth line so I could do this.
Oh, thank you. I'll link her blog down below in the description. And she talks about all the things that her and her friends think goes into making the best baklava and incorporating them into this recipe. So here's hoping that it's really yummy. I've never made baklava before. For this recipe, you need 3 cups of almonds. It's recommended that they're blanched almonds, but if they still have the skins on them, which mine do, she recommends putting them in boiling water. So I've got 3 cups of almonds here. I boiled my kettle and poured it over top, and they've been sitting in the boiling water. It's not boiling anymore, but it's still warm to the touch. And you just peel them by popping the skins off. I thought this was going to be a really onerous part of the recipe, but it's quite quick, and they pop off really easily. So obviously a little time consuming, but not frustrating or challenging like I thought it might be. In the few minutes while your almonds are sitting in the water to loosen up their skins, that's a great time to make your syrup. For the syrup, you need 1 cup of water, 2 cups of sugar. We're going to pour them in the pot and let it come to a boil without stirring. Okay, Mom's going to pour it in. The water and the sugar are in the pot to boil for 2 to 3 minutes without being stirred so the sugar doesn't crystallize. And then after that, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice to the mixture and then continue to simmer for about 10 minutes until it gets thick enough that it'll stick to a spoon. And I came back and tested it, and it is sort of the right consistency to coat my spoon. All clear now and looks really nice. So the next step, which is the last step in making this syrup, is adding the floral notes. To do this, there are 2 ingredients that this recipe calls for: orange blossom water and rose water. Not a lot, half a teaspoon of orange blossom water and only a 1/4 teaspoon of rose water. But I think those are really important to the flavor. I found those in all of the recipes I looked at, or at least rose water. Several other Arabic dessert recipes that I looked at also called for rose water. So now I have a bottle. I only used a 1/4 teaspoon of it, so I've got lots. They weren't expensive, but I couldn't find them at my local grocery store. These were one of the things that I purchased when I went to the Arabic grocery store. And not, like I said, not expensive. They were only like $2.99 each. But I thought they were worthwhile to have, and then I can continue making Middle Eastern desserts. So in it goes. And just give that a little stir. So you add the floral waters after you've turned the heat off. You can mix it in, give it a little stir, and then just set it to the side. After finishing our syrup and finishing with peeling our almonds, we're ready to make the filling for our baklava. All of the almonds are in the food processor. We're going to rough chop them first, and then we're going to add a little bit of our syrup, 4 tablespoons, to combine and then chop them until they're finer. So here we go. That looks like a pretty good rough chop to me. So here's 3 tablespoons of my syrup, And here's the last tablespoon. You can see it, or maybe you can't because it's clear, but it has come out quite thick. So, and it smells quite floral, and that's really the dominant thing I taste, even though I only put in a half a teaspoon and a quarter teaspoon of those flour water mixtures. So it clearly a little goes a long way with those. Pour in my sugar syrup here. Obviously we're going to use the rest later, but this part goes right in the filling. Here's my almond filling with the syrup all incorporated. Some pieces are bigger than others, I think because of the nature of the machine I was using, but hopefully this is right. And now it's time to start building our pastry. Now it's time to assemble our baklava pastry. We have the things we need right here. The almond filling mixture we made with our homemade syrup. Phyllo pastry itself, we have 2 boxes. So those have been defrosted and brought up to room temperature for working. I have them laid out on one pan here that's the same size as the pan I'm working with, and then covered with a damp cloth to keep their moisture. If the dish you're using to cook your baklava is not the same size as your sheets, it's a good idea to cut all of the sheets together in advance, and that'll make laying your baklava much easier. We also have a cup of melted butter and a pastry brush. We're going to be brushing each of the sheets individually with butter. Instead of using regular grocery store butter, I'm using ghee, which is the clarified butter we used in the mamo recipe. I still had some left over, and it doesn't contain the dairy protein. I should be able to eat it, which is very exciting for me. Admission, I've never used phyllo pastry before. I have enjoyed it many times. Okay, so this is wider than my pan, so I might need to cut all of my pieces to make it fit. I've trimmed down my pastry sheet and the rest of them over here. So now it's time to start butter brushing. So I'm just gonna brush my sheet with butter and then stack the next one over top. So this is a part of the process that, like a few of our different recipes, you can choose to have it be a meditative spiritual practice or a chance to listen to a good podcast, groove to some tunes in your kitchen, or reflect on this week's story. This week's story is the story of Mary and Martha and Jesus visiting their home. And so in this story, Jesus goes to Mary and Martha's home, and Martha invites him in and then gets busy getting to work in all that she feels is associated with hosting someone of Jesus' status in her home. And of course his disciples. So a lot of food preparation likely, wants her place to be clean, wants to make a good impression. But Mary's not so worried about it. Her sister, she just goes and plunks herself at Jesus' feet and listens to what he has to say. 2 very different approaches. I know I'm somebody who definitely puts a lot of energy into hosting. I love hosting. I love cooking for people, obviously. And for me, doing that is really a way that I express my love, I would say. I would say that as far as giving goes, food is a love language for me. But I also see how it's really easy to get caught up in expectations and to get so caught up in all the little details of hosting and wanting everything to be perfect all the time that you can't see the forest for the trees, and then you don't even get to enjoy your party. You don't get to enjoy your guests. all of those sorts of things. So I think in that sense, Mary has a really great strategy. She said, I have this really wonderful guest here, and instead of getting stuck on making sure my every detail is perfect, I'm going to just be with them and hear what they have to say and what makes them so special in the first place. But I think there's, a lot of value in both. But it's important to reflect in any given moment and think about what your priorities are. And if you're missing out on any one opportunity for the sake of something else. And setting your own expectations and your own priorities according to what you value in that moment. It's a lesson I'm learning. I'm definitely, I think, a little bit more of a Martha than a Mary. And so balance is good with lots of things. So this is going to take a while, brushing all of this pastry with butter. So I'm going to keep working away at this until I've got 20 sheets, and then we'll fill in the almond, and then we'll do another 20 sheets on top. I have now buttered my entire first box of phyllo pastry and ready to spread my almond mixture. Having never worked with phyllo pastry before, there was certainly a lot of learning for me. Man, those sheets are thin. They're delicate. They rip easily. And not wanting them to dry out, my damp cloth was like a little too damp, I think. And when I had to leave for a little bit and left it there, they got too wet, and then I ripped the next one. There also weren't quite 20 sheets in my box. I think I'm gonna be more at like 15 and 15. So just some things to know. And now I'm spreading this out so it's quite pasty, some of it. The stuff that was down near the blades of my blender. So I'll try to spread it out as evenly as I can. I'll do the top sheets of phyllo pastry, and then I will meet you back here. I've finally finished brushing my phyllo pastry with the almond filling in the middle. So I've got all of my sheets now. And what I did after that was score the baklava. In the blog, Yasmin recommends doing it every 1.5 inches across and then diagonally. So I have my oven up to temp behind me. And so finally, 24 plus 30 hours after I started making this baklava, I'm finally putting it in the oven. I'm so excited. It's going to be in there for between 50 to 60 minutes until the top is turning golden brown. So happy baking! My hot baklava has just come out of the oven. As you can see, I've chopped my pistachios over here. I'm sure this is more than 5 tablespoons, but that's okay. I don't think anyone will complain that there's too much on the top. So one of Yasmin's big tips for adding your syrup to your baklava is you want to maintain that crunchy top layer. So she suggests spooning the syrup into the cracks. And she said you'd hear it sizzle. Oh, I hear it. It's getting down to the bottom now. It's sizzling. So by pouring it into the cracks, lots will get absorbed into the bottom layer and into the almond layer, but not into the top layer, so it'll stay nice and crispy. You do want to make sure you drizzle some over the top in order to have the pistachios stick. There we have it. I'm just putting the final touches on my baklava with scattering the last few pistachios on top. I think it turned out really nice. I'm really excited to try some once it cools, although given the time it already is at night, I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait tonight. It'll have to be tomorrow. a very decadent breakfast indeed. Well, even though this recipe took me a lot longer to get from start to finish than I had hoped or than it usually does, I'm really glad that you were here with me, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And I hope to hear about you trying your own. If you have a place that you like to get baklava as a treat at a favorite local restaurant or grocery place, and there's a place that makes it that's really good, I'd love if you drop that down in the comments. I'd love to know where to go to get some really good baklava for a little taste comparison. And yeah, thanks for coming out and joining me this week on Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. We'll be back next week. Look forward to seeing you then. Bye!